Now, shall we begin?
The one thing they love more than a hero is to see a hero fail, fall, die trying. In spite of everything you've done for them, eventually they will hate you.
Alright, so here we are once again with the Predacon repaints. And this time up we have Slapper. Slapper is the imaginatively named frog of the group. And we can see him compared to here. Again, on the left is the Beast War version, the original, which is the Predacon Spitter. And to the right is the Robots in Disguise repaint version, also the Predacon, but Slapper. In this case, Slapper is actually the only one of the Three Stooges that actually does have a Predacon Beast mode. Albeit an unusual or rare beast mode, Predacons generally tend to be either reptiles or insects, with them favoring arachnids and crustaceans after that. Amphibians are actually a relatively rare type. There's only really one or two of them that were made. And only really frogs. Other amphibians like salamanders or newts or toads don't get used. In the case of Spitter / Slapper here, he's supposed to be a tree frog, a poison dart tree frog, I believe. Now, I've before praised Robots in Disguise's paint job, which again, especially their earlier figures they released, really are phenomenally painted. However, in the case of Spitter and Slapper here, the paint jobs actually aren't that too dissimilar. Only goes to show the level of care taken with the Beast War toys, which really only got better and better throughout the Beast War's lifespan. Again, remember that we are dealing here with Transmetal 2s, which were from the third season era of Beast Wars. So Beast Wars had been running for about 3 years, and the toy line slightly longer than this. So they obviously got quite good at what they were doing at the time. Then you had a couple of years pass by for Beast Machines, and then Robots in Disguise reused some of these Beast War molds because they were honestly quite that good. Now, unlike Stink Bomb and Gas Skunk from the last time we took a look at these Predacon models, you can see there's quite a difference in their color. Again, for the physical mold, they are the same. I don't believe there's any retooling done to them. And retooling, if you're unfamiliar with that term, refers to when they actually change something physical about the model. Literally going in and editing, if you will, to use a computer term, the mold to often to improve safety or to perhaps change the character to be more unique from the previous version. Retooling is actually a lot more common these days, especially among the Transformers Generations toy line, which often takes advantage of retooling in order to make one character look like a different character. But back in the early 2000s and before, retooling was rarely done, typically only because of some safety, child safety law is tend to be the only reason they would use it. And in the case of Slapper here, he was an original character, so there was no need to try to make him look like anyone. His look was the look. And Spitter's case, he actually never featured in Beast Wars, a non-show character or toy-only character, if you like. Therefore, there's not much cause to make Slapper appear different from Spitter, since unless you own the toy, you're not going to know who Spitter is anyway. Now, for color-wise, we can see that Spitter is a largely blue and green tree frog, although he's got purple, kind of an underbelly, lower jaw, the legs that are closest, part of the leg that are closest to the body. And this is a really dark, almost black purple along his body here. And he's got some of it also in the blue here. Whereas for Slapper, he has a black underbelly and lower jaw and legs. Interestingly, he's colored almost in the exact same areas that Spitter is colored. Just the different colors, of course. But where Spitter has dark purple, Slapper has black, where Spitter has blue, Slapper has red. You will note, however, that again, like with Gas Skunk, they painted the toes here. I'm not quite sure why they're painted silver. Again, almost a claw-like effect, although amphibians aren't really known for having claws. But again, perhaps this is to make him seem a little bit more dangerous. And again, remember, this mold, when it came out for Robots in Disguise, was already several years old, because it originally came out for Beast Wars. So you're going to kids and collectors who may have already bought this, or even their parents who may remember having bought the original toy. Why are they going to buy the same thing again just because it's another color? So you try to up the ante by giving it a better paint job. Now, I particularly like here, with both these ones, surprisingly, Robots in Disguise had, it's not every model, unfortunately, but they had a tendency to chrome the eyes, which is a very nice touch, and very rare, actually, for a beast mode. This allows it to reflect the light and make the Transformer seem much more alive. And it's a far better method than the rather fan-hated strategy or methodology of light piping, the bane of every Transformer collector, although of course it has its fans. But light piping is when you make the part of the Transformer actually translucent, so that light will shine through it. This means, of course, that the back of the head generally doesn't have any paint application whatsoever. It's just one big transparent mass, so you feel like you should be able to see the Transformer's brain inside, or computer, or whatever passes for it. Also has the effect that if there's no light behind the Transformer, his optics, the eyes, appear to be off all the time. Very annoying when you're playing as a kid and your Transformer looks like he's asleep the whole time. Because literally you have to position him so that a light source, whether a lamp or maybe the sun from a window, is behind him at all times so that he looks like he's awake. But if there is no light piping, the eyes are just painted, as was the case with Stink Bomb and Gas Skunk, well, then he looks like he's online the entire time. And if the eyes are chromed, should you be fortunate enough to own a Transformer that has that tactic, they'll actually reflect the light and seem much more alive. Spitter is a rare example of a non-Robots in Disguise toy utilizing this. He actually does have these violet or pink colored chrome eyes. Now, chrome is not an unusual application to both Transmetals and Transmetal 2s, which some people like and some people hate. It's a very cool look, and definitely that is why they did it. However, the chrome has a bad tendency to often flake off, which of course then looks horrendous afterwards. How much the chrome flakes really depends what they chromed, what color they chromed it, and how much you ended up rubbing it. Spitter actually has a very good quality chrome. The material they chromed holds that chrome very nicely. And even though I've owned this toy for many, many years at this point, as you can see, the chrome's not really rubbed off on him significantly beyond a little bit with the pseudo tail here, if you can even tell. Ditto really goes for Slapper. He's just as good as holding that chrome, which comes in two tones on the body, the blue for the back and the orange for the head, whereas Spitter's is both a green color, although their eyes are both different. And again, only really flaking off here in this sort of pseudo tail and a little bit on the top of the claws, which you probably can't tell very well. Now, beforehand with the Stink Bomb Gas Skunk combo, I complained that they didn't have an accessory. Again, an unfortunately common or not uncommon trope with Beast War Transformers. However, Spitter, fortunately, avoids this trope in his Transmetal 2 form, and therefore Slapper benefits from this as well. He actually comes with a tail, a particularly vicious-looking spiky thing that can be applied to the inside of his mouth in his beast mode, allowing him to have a tail there for presumably not catching flies, but perhaps swatting or smacking his enemies. It can be stored underneath via a handy little peg here if you don't wish him to have his tongue sticking out the whole time, which is a really nice touch. I appreciate the level of craftsmanship. That is definite quality control that unfortunately some Transformers do lack. There you can see both of them can now stick their tongues at each other. It's a nice little feature. Frogs are known to do this, so definitely for the kids it's nice to have that, although for the most part it doesn't really serve a practical purpose. Alright, let's get Spitter out of here. And we'll now transform Slapper. It is usually easier to remove the the tongue, assuming you've even attached it. Oh, let's quickly go over his articulation here real quick. Again, Kinner, which was in charge of the Beast Wars line, put a big emphasis on making these action figures, especially in the robot mode, but also in the beast mode, which is an advantage Beast Transformers have over their vehicle counterparts. After all, other usually than some, rolling wheels, vehicles don't do much but sit there. But a Beast Transformer can actually pose. Slapper here has articulation in the shoulder-thigh area, which is a ball joint for both, although the Beast Mode does limit it a little bit. He's got knee articulation, again, ball jointed, and he's got ankle articulation. Just a hinge for the back legs, but a ball joint for the front ones. That's unfortunately where his articulation really ends. He's got a very limited mouth articulation, largely actually due to his transformation method more than any intent to actually give the mouth articulation. The head doesn't actually turn or look anywhere. He has no equivalent sort of waist bend or anything like that. Now to transform him, he literally opens up his mouth if he's going to swallow the world. And you can, again, like with Gasgunk, already see most of the robot taking shape here already. Really spin it around, spin the knees around. Already has him done from the waist down. In fact, fold the mouth as a back plate. The really only tricky part is revolving the top now. It may be easier to turn him back around. This part hinges up on a double hinge, allowing the head the freedom to move up. His head's actually stored inside of his mouth, and you may even be able to spot the Predacon crystal already, revealing his true allegiance. If you were ever in doubt, again, robots in disguise. If it's an animal, it's a Predacon. So not much of a secret here. But then the show uses the spark crystal as a weapon. Rather silly. The whole unit spins around. Unfortunately, that no longer poses nicely. As you can tell, it's worn out on me. But this simply folds down. The head folds here. And you have another shoulder. And this gives you the Predacon Slapper in his robot mode. For articulation, about the same again. He has a ball-jointed thigh, ball-jointed knee, ball-jointed ankle. He does have a waist. The back plate gets a little bit in the way, but again, you just fold it out a little bit, and you can turn him as much as you like. It spins all the way around. If you lift up his shoulder plates, you can in fact see that he does have ball-jointed shoulders, ball-jointed elbows, and then he has the hinge for the wrist. Tongue weapon as a club. Slapper actually does not really make use of this weapon in the show. In fact, in robot mode, he has a tongue, as you might remember, about a couple feet long with some inches thrown in. And he measures it in Battle Protocol.
42 feet 3 inches. That's impressive.
Less said about that, the better. And I think that is actually supposed to be his tongue club weapon. It's black even. So they transferred it into his robot mouth. Now, Slapper does actually have a secondary weapon that he only very rarely makes use of in the show. And that is this obviously blue claw-like chrome bit on his shoulder pad. Again, you noticed, or I mentioned that how it was worn out. That's because that's how the claw activates. Moving up and down here. And now he actually is armed with another weapon. Unfortunately, there's not too much range of motion with this beyond hinging down. It actually, despite being ball jointed here on the shoulder pad, the pauldron, it doesn't really bend forward, though. He really has to get in nice and close with his opponent before being able to use that. His robot mode gives him a rather distinctive hunch sort of stature. You notice the head jutting out from the front of the torso rather than placed on top of it. Not too many Transformers have a robot mode like this, whether they be amphibian or otherwise, giving him a slightly distinct robot mode. Again, personality-wise, Slapper is not much different than the other Three Stooges Predacons. They're all cowardly, not very bright, and incompetent. Hence, Three Stooges. Slapper actually has a skill in the group. He's actually a capable hacker. Although I believe he only uses this really once. We do occasionally see him on a computer. He does tend to use computers more often than the other two. But him actually being a hacker or having hacking skills is really only mentioned in one episode, as I can recall, and is only significant for that one episode. Being amphibian, he's actually a capable fighter in the water. Now, when it comes to water, it's an interesting thing with Transformers. Being robots, they don't tend to operate very well in the water generally. So a Transformer that has an aquatic type alt mode, whether it be a beast mode or a vehicle mode like a boat or submarine, tend to be specialized in that they can in fact operate underwater, whereas most Transformers cannot. However, in Robots in Disguise case, this is somewhat negated by the fact that they all can operate underwater anyway. A bit unusual, actually, in a Transformer franchise. Having an aquatic beast mode or alt mode is only advantageous in that you are better when underwater than a Transformer who does not have an aquatic alt mode. It's not, again, a exclusive advantage since they can all go underwater. Now, here's an interesting little bit of trivia you can do if you do, in fact, own two of them. It's actually optional which way you actually fold the stomach. The lower part, the lower jaw here, actually fits perfectly into the chest here, which opens, with the pectorials, actually opens up just right to fit it in perfectly, as if it was made to do it that way. So you actually have the option of which way you want the either back plate or chest plate to go. If you own two of them, you can in fact make them both different. Now, Slapper in the show does indeed use the lower frog jaw as a back plate, but you could use Spitter the opposite way to give them a little bit more distinct appearance from each other. I actually prefer Slapper's style myself, but again, if you want to do that with either Slapper or Spitter to make him slightly more distinct from the other, you most certainly can. Paint-wise, again, Spitter actually has a rather exceptionally good paint job. Not that Beast Wars has really bad paint jobs for the most part. They also very well painted them, but even by Beast Wars standards, Spitter is actually pretty good. You'll notice with the face here, the faces are painted. Both sets do not paint the teeth different. The face and teeth are green on Spitter, and the face and teeth are silver on Slapper. The eyes are both painted, with Spitter having kind of these pink tinted eyes to match his beast mode eyes, and Slapper having, again, blue eyes, not unlike Gas Skunk, matching his claw. Both heads, dark purple for Spitter and red for Slapper, both actually have paint applications on them. How well you can tell, but Spitter actually has blue, two sections of it on his sort of helmet here, where Slapper has the green orb painted instead. Really, Slapper's paint job is only slightly nicer than Spitter's. Again, you'll notice the back here is painted quite different, or the sort of stripes are absent here, but you have three different color tones. The red paint for the actual piece itself with purple trim and the sort of gold bronze here on the back, whereas Spitter only has really the two colors. If we make Spitter match Slapper's robot mode, you'll notice that Slapper actually has extra paint on his torso, this purple stripe going along right under the pectorials, whereas Spitter is just straight up green for his abdomen area. And he actually has a abs molded onto here, a 4-pack, if you will. Slapper even has a little bit of silver, if you can make it out, on the pectorials, whereas Spitter's are just blue, matching everything else. Interestingly enough, Slapper's teeth are not painted, unlike Gas Skunk's were, and that's both for the upper and lower jaw on this model. So that really rounds up Slapper. There's not too much else to say. Like the other three Stooges Predacons, he doesn't go through any type of character arc. He always remains incompetent, bumbling coward like the other two. So thank you for joining me, Bots and Fembots, and next time we will review the third and final Predacon Stooge.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shore of Orion. I watched sea beams glittering in